Your kind smells like a dumpster, you black animal. Go sit in the back before you infect the white people up here.
Bianca Ingram froze, clutching the small wooden box against her chest. Sharon Whitmore leaned in closer, lips curled in disgust.
I'm talking to you, monkey. Are you too stupid to understand English?
40 passengers heard every word. 40 passengers looked away.
Please, ma'am. Please just let me sit.
Karen's hand flew through the air. The slap cracked across Bianca's face like a gunshot. The wooden box tumbled from her hands. The lid burst open. Gray ash spilled across the cream carpet. And what Karen did next would end her career, her marriage, and her freedom. All before the plane touched the ground. Let me take you back 12 hours before that slap. Back to a quiet white house in Bethesda, Maryland, where a woman in a gray hoodie was sitting on her son's bedroom floor. Her name was Dr. Bianca Ingram, 42 years old, Chief Medical Officer of the National Children's Heart Network, the largest pediatric cardiac system in America, with 34 hospitals across the country. She had saved over 3,000 children's hearts with her own 2 hands. She had been on the cover of Time magazine. She had testified in front of Congress twice. And right now, she was sitting on the floor of her dead son's bedroom, holding a Spider-Man doll against her face, trying to remember how he smelled. Jordan Ingram, 6 years old. Born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, the same brutal condition his mother had spent her entire career fighting. She had operated on him 4 times. 4 times she had held her own baby's heart in her gloved hands and brought him back. And each time, Jordan had woken up in recovery, looked at her with those enormous brown eyes, and whispered the same 3 words. "Told you, Mama?" But on the 5th surgery, 3 days ago, Bianca's hands started shaking so badly she couldn't hold the scalpel. She stepped back. She let her best friend operate instead. And Jordan's tired little heart finally stopped fighting. Bianca wasn't even in the operating room when it happened. She was in the hallway, on her knees, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. She had saved 3,000 other people's babies, but she couldn't save the only one who called her Mama. Now pause with me for a second, because I need you to understand who this woman really was. Bianca grew up in the projects of East Baltimore. Her mother, Dolores, worked double shifts at a laundromat for 23 years, hands cracked and bleeding from the bleach. Her father died when she was 8. She used to do her homework under a streetlight because the electricity got cut off so often. But every single night, her mother would kneel beside her bed and whisper the same thing. "Baby, they can take the lights. They can take the water. They can take every single thing in this apartment. But what's in your head? That belongs to you forever." Bianca carried those words to Howard University on a full scholarship, then to Johns Hopkins Medical School, where she graduated top of her class in 2009. She married her college sweetheart, a gentle math teacher named Elijah, in 2015, and on a rainy April morning in 2019, Jordan was born. Blue around the lips, emergency surgery within the first 6 hours of his life. The doctors told Bianca her son might not make it to kindergarten. Bianca looked them in the eye and said, "Watch me." 2 months later, Elijah died of a brain aneurysm while making Jordan's morning bottle. He collapsed in the kitchen with the bottle still in his hand. Bianca found him. She buried her husband on a Thursday and performed open-heart surgery on a stranger's baby the following Monday, because that baby was going to die if she didn't. That's who this woman was. That is the woman Karen Whitmore called a monkey. Now listen closely, because I want you to understand something about Jordan too. Before his final surgery, Jordan sat up in his hospital bed, clutching his Spider-Man doll, and said something to his mother that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. "Mama, if I don't come back this time, don't cry too long, okay? Go save the other kids for me. Promise?" Bianca promised. Then she kissed his forehead and told him Spider-Man always comes home. 3 days later, she was on a plane to Los Angeles. She was flying to Santa Monica Pier, the one place Jordan had begged to see when I get better. She was going to scatter half of his ashes into the Pacific Ocean at sunset, just like he'd asked. And because she was exhausted beyond words, the airline had given her a complimentary first-class upgrade through their Pediatric Medical Partnership Program, the same program Bianca herself had helped design 3 years earlier. She didn't wear a suit. She didn't introduce herself. She just wanted to disappear inside her hoodie and get through this flight without falling apart. Now let me tell you about the other woman on this plane. Karen Whitmore, 51 years old, senior purser for 18 years, married to a cardiologist in Chevy Chase who spent most of his time at the hospital because his wife exhausted him. One daughter at Georgetown, who that very morning had called Karen on the phone and told her she was dating a wonderful black pre-med student from Atlanta. Karen had hung up on her own daughter, slammed the phone down so hard the screen cracked. Then she drove to Dulles Airport in a silent rage, muttering under her breath the whole way. By the time Karen clocked in for her shift that night, she was looking for somebody black to punish. Anybody would do. And then Bianca Ingram walked onto her plane. A black woman, in a cheap-looking hoodie, holding a strange wooden box, sitting in seat 1A, the seat Karen considered her personal throne. Karen checked the manifest. Complimentary first class, medical partnership program. Her lip curled so hard it almost tore her lipstick. "Of course," she muttered to the junior attendant, a young woman named Rebecca Miller. "Another charity case. They keep letting these people up here, and next thing you know, the whole cabin smells like a bus station." Rebecca froze. Rebecca was 23 years old, 3 months into her first airline job, $60,000 in student loan debt, and terrified of Karen Whitmore. She said nothing, but she remembered every word. And in 4 hours, Rebecca's memory would become the most important witness testimony of the entire federal investigation. Here's what I want you to hold in your mind right now. On one side of that first-class cabin, you had a woman who had saved 3,000 children's lives with her bare hands, cradling what was left of her own dead little boy. On the other side, you had a woman with 18 years of seniority, 6 buried racial discrimination complaints in her personnel file, and a personal grudge against every black face that boarded her plane that night. Karen had no idea who Bianca was. Karen didn't care. Karen just saw a hoodie and a skin color and decided that was enough. That decision was about to cost her absolutely everything. Now look, I know you're thinking, how could this even happen in 2026? Haven't we learned anything? And that's exactly the point of this story. Because Karen Whitmore had gotten away with behavior like this for 18 years. 6 women, all of them black, had filed formal complaints about her. Every single one of those complaints had been quietly buried by 3 executives in the airline's corporate office who thought a senior purser with Karen's root seniority was more valuable than 6 black passengers' dignity. 6 complaints, 18 years, 0 consequences. Until the night Karen Whitmore slapped the wrong woman, and sitting in seat 2B, 4 feet away from everything that was about to happen, was the one passenger on that entire aircraft who was going to make absolutely sure this was the last slap Karen Whitmore ever gave anyone. But I'll get to her in a minute. First, you need to see exactly what happened the moment Bianca Ingram stepped onto that plane. Because I promise you, it's even worse than the hook I showed you at the start. 11:02 p.m. Bianca shuffled down the jet bridge with her head down, Jordan's wooden box cradled against her chest like a newborn. Her hoodie was stained with 3 days of tears. Her sneakers were the same pair she'd been wearing when the doctors came out of the OR and told her Jordan was gone. She hadn't changed them. She couldn't. Taking those shoes off felt like admitting it was real. She stepped into the cabin, and Karen Whitmore was standing right there at the galley, arms crossed, chin up, eyes already narrowed. "Boarding pass." Bianca held it out with a trembling hand. Karen snatched it, scanned it, and her jaw tightened. "Seat 1A, complimentary upgrade." She said the word complimentary like it tasted like rotten milk. "Go ahead," she muttered. "Try not to touch anything." Bianca walked past her without a word. She slid into 1A, placed the wooden box carefully on her lap, and wrapped both arms around it. Then she closed her eyes and started whispering Jordan's name under her breath, like a prayer. She was trying to hold herself together with nothing but her son's name and her mother's voice in her head. Karen began the pre-flight champagne service. She served 1B, she served 1C, she served 2A and 2B and 2C. She walked right past Bianca like she wasn't even there. Twice. The silver-haired woman in 2B watched this happen with eyes that didn't miss a single detail. Bianca didn't complain. She didn't call the button. She just sat there, eyes closed, holding her box. But then the takeoff happened. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and Bianca, in the softest voice you've ever heard, raised her hand and whispered, "Ma'am, could I please have some water? Just water, please." Karen turned around slowly, walked over, looked down at Bianca like she was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "Excuse me?" "Water, please. I haven't had anything to drink since yesterday." Karen leaned one hand on the armrest and leaned in close. "Sweetheart, I don't know who let you up here, but this cabin is for people who actually belong in it. You want water? Drag your little hoodie to the back alley and ask the coach attendants. This is first class." Bianca swallowed hard. "Ma'am, I paid for—" "You paid for nothing," Karen snapped loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "I saw your manifest. Charity program. Please, we both know what that means." A businessman in 2A lowered his newspaper. The silver-haired woman in 2B set down her glass very slowly. Karen's eyes dropped to the wooden box in Bianca's lap. "And what the hell is that?" Bianca's arms tightened around the box instinctively. It's personal, ma'am. Please." "Personal?" Karen laughed. "Honey, nothing on my airplane is personal. You're not allowed to bring random junk into first class. Hand it over, I'll put it in the overhead." "No." Bianca's voice cracked. Please, you don't understand." "I said hand it over." Karen reached down and grabbed the edge of the box. Bianca grabbed the other edge. For one horrible second, they were both holding it. And then Karen yanked. The box slipped out of Bianca's grip, tumbled through the air, hit the cream-colored carpet with a soft, terrible thud. The lid burst open, and gray ash poured out across the floor of the first-class cabin. Fine, pale, impossibly light gray ash. The ashes of a 6-year-old boy who had loved Spider-Man and ice cream and his mother's laugh. Bianca made a sound that nobody on that plane had ever heard a human being make before. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was the sound of a woman's last thread, snapping in half. She dropped to her knees in the aisle. She started scooping Jordan's ashes back into the box with her bare, shaking hands. Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Mama's got you. Mama's got you." And Karen Whitmore, instead of falling to her own knees and begging forgiveness, looked down at this broken mother on the floor of her airplane and said the words that ended her life. "I warned you, didn't I? This is your fault. Now clean it up before you stain my carpet, you filthy!" And her hand flew through the air. The slap cracked across Bianca's cheek like a rifle shot. Bianca's head snapped sideways. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. And that's when the silver-haired woman in seat 2B stood up. But before I tell you who that silver-haired woman was, I need you to see what happened in the next 60 seconds. Because the next 60 seconds belonged to a 10-year-old boy. Seat 3C. His name was Eli Brooks. Brown curly hair, Spider-Man pajamas under his jacket because his mom let him wear them on red-eye flights, and a juice box he'd been saving for the movie. Eli had watched the whole thing. He'd watched Karen skip Bianca twice during the champagne service. He'd watched her yank the box. He'd watched the ashes spill. He'd watched Bianca drop to her knees. And he'd watched that slap. Eli Brooks, 10 years old, unbuckled his seatbelt while his mother whispered, "Honey, sit down, please sit down," and slid out of his seat anyway. He walked up the aisle, past 40 adults who were frozen in their chairs, past a businessman staring at his tray table, past a woman clutching her pearls, and he knelt down next to Bianca on that dirty cabin floor. He pulled a stack of clean cocktail napkins out of his little hand and held them out. "Ma'am?" Bianca looked up, her face wet with tears and ashes. "Ma'am, I can help. My mom says I have gentle hands." And this 10-year-old white boy, in his Spider-Man pajamas, started carefully scooping the ashes of a little black boy back into a wooden box with cocktail napkins. Bianca started crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Not from the slap, not from the insults, from the fact that out of 40 grown adults on that plane, the only one who had the courage to kneel beside her was a child. "What's his name, ma'am?" Eli whispered. "Jordan," Bianca choked out. "His name was Jordan. He was 6. Same age as my little brother." Eli pulled his Spider-Man wristband off his own wrist. He laid it gently next to the wooden box. "Jordan can have this one. Spider-Man takes care of kids in heaven, too. My mom told me." Bianca wrapped her arms around that little boy and sobbed into his shoulder. And somewhere in the back of the cabin, Eli's mother, a woman named Sarah Brooks, started recording everything on her phone, with tears rolling down her own face. But Sarah Brooks wasn't just any mother. Sarah Brooks was a senior investigative reporter for the Washington Post. 11 years covering civil rights violations, 3 Pulitzer nominations, and at that exact moment, she already had 3 unread emails from her editor asking about her next big story. She now had it in her hands. Karen, meanwhile, was still standing over Bianca with her arms crossed, trying to look in charge. "Oh, please," she snapped. "The dramatic little show is over. Everybody return to your seats." Nobody moved. Not one single passenger. And then, from seat 2B came a voice. Calm, quiet, but made of something that sounded like old iron. "Young lady, pick up that intercom. Right now." Karen turned. The silver-haired woman was standing in the aisle with one hand on the back of her seat. Navy cardigan, pearl earrings, reading glasses hanging from a thin gold chain. She looked like somebody's grandmother on her way home from a church luncheon. Karen rolled her eyes so hard you could almost hear it. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take your seat. I'm handling this." "You are not handling anything, young lady. You're making it immeasurably worse. Pick up the intercom and call the captain down here. Now." "Ma'am." "Pick up the intercom." Something in the old woman's voice made Karen's hand twitch. But Karen's ego was bigger than her instincts. Ma'am, I am the senior purser on this aircraft. I don't take orders from passengers. Please return to your seat before I have you listed as a disruptive traveler. The silver-haired woman smiled. It was the kind of smile a wolf makes right before it decides it's dinner time. Oh, sweetheart, she said softly. You have absolutely no idea who you're speaking to, do you? Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Excuse me? The old woman picked up the intercom herself, pressed the captain's call button, and spoke 6 words that made the entire cabin hold its breath. Captain, this is Senator Davis. Come. Let that name hang in the air for a second. Senator Davis, because Karen Whitmore's brain didn't process it right away. She heard the word senator, and her mind went, sure, lady, whatever helps you feel important. She actually rolled her eyes a second time. Ma'am, I don't care if you're the Queen of England. Sit down. The silver-haired woman didn't sit down. She didn't even blink. She just set the intercom back in its cradle, folded her hands in front of her, and waited. The cockpit door clicked open. Heavy footsteps coming down the aisle. Captain James Anderson, 29 years with the airline. Gray at the temples, wedding ring on his left hand, eyes that had seen every kind of human mess you can imagine at 35,000 feet. He rounded the galley curtain and stopped dead. A black woman on her hands and knees on the floor, ashes scattered across the carpet. A 10-year-old boy in Spider-Man pajamas kneeling beside her with cocktail napkins, and his senior purser standing over both of them like a prison guard. What is happening on my airplane? Karen jumped in fast. Captain, disruptive passenger. She brought unauthorized items into first class, refused to comply with crew instructions, physically resisted. Shut up, Karen. The whole cabin inhaled. Captain Anderson had never spoken to a crew member like that in his entire career. He stepped past her and knelt down beside Bianca. Ma'am? Ma'am, can you look at me? Bianca lifted her face, tear stain, ash on her cheeks, a red handprint blooming across her jaw. And Captain Anderson's eyes went wide. Oh my God. He whispered it. Oh my God. Dr. Ingram? Bianca's breath caught. Dr. Bianca Ingram? She nodded, one tiny, exhausted nod. Captain Anderson's hands started shaking. Ma'am, 2 years ago, at Johns Hopkins Children's Center, you operated on a little girl named Lily Anderson. Tetralogy of Fallot. 7-hour surgery. You came out into the waiting room at 2 o'clock in the morning and told her father she was going to be okay. Bianca closed her eyes. Lily. Curly red hair. She wanted me to save her stuffed bunny first. The captain's voice broke completely. That was my niece, Dr. Ingram. Lily is 8 years old now. She rides horses. She plays soccer. She's alive because of you. He looked at the wooden box on the floor, at the ashes, at the Spider-Man wristband, and Captain James Anderson, a grown man with 29 years in the sky, started to cry, right there in the aisle of his own airplane. Ma'am, is this? Bianca nodded. Jordan, my son. He was 6. Dear God. Captain Anderson turned his head slowly toward Karen, and his entire face changed. You assaulted the woman who saved my niece's life. Karen stammered. Captain, I didn't know. You spilled the ashes of her dead child across my cabin floor. Captain, listen. And then you slapped her while she was on her knees trying to pick up her own baby. The words came out quiet, which somehow made them worse. Karen's face went white. Captain, she refused to comply. I was following protocol. There is no protocol on this airline that authorizes you to touch a passenger, Karen. There is no protocol that authorizes you to say the things I'm being told you said. There is no protocol for any of this. Karen's eyes darted around the cabin, looking for allies, finding none. And that's when her survival instinct kicked in, and she made the second worst mistake of her entire life. She pulled her personal phone out of her apron pocket. Right there in the aisle, in front of Captain Anderson, in front of Senator Davis, in front of Sarah Brooks still recording on her phone, in front of 40 witnesses. She dialed a number, and when the voice on the other end picked up, she said 9 words that would become the centerpiece of a federal indictment 4 months later. "Hi, it's Karen. I need you to bury this one." Bianca, still on her knees in Jordan's ashes, heard her say it. And something inside Bianca Ingram that had been shattered for 3 straight days finally straightened back up. She didn't stand yet. She just reached out and took the wooden box from Eli's gentle hands. She held it against her chest. She closed her eyes, and in her head, she heard her son's voice one more time. "Mama, if I don't come back this time, don't cry too long, okay? Go save the other kids for me. Promise?" Her lips moved silently. "I promised you, baby, and Mama keeps her promises." Then Bianca Ingram, Chief Medical Officer of the largest pediatric heart network in America, rose from the floor of that airplane with Jordan's ashes in her arms. She turned to Captain Anderson. "Captain, I'd like to press federal charges, right now, while we're still in the air. I want this documented with the FAA before we land." Captain Anderson straightened his spine. "Yes, ma'am." Karen's phone was still pressed to her ear. Whoever was on the other end was saying something frantic. Bianca walked, calmly, steadily, ashes all over her hoodie, straight to Karen and held out her hand. "Give me the phone, ma'am." Karen actually laughed. "Excuse me? You don't give me the phone." Karen's hand was shaking now. She handed it over without meaning to. Bianca lifted the phone to her ear. "This is Dr. Bianca Ingram, Chief Medical Officer of the National Children's Heart Network. I don't know who you are, but I do know that this call is being recorded on a federal aircraft, which makes it admissible in federal court. Whoever you are, I would start consulting with a criminal defense attorney within the next hour. I'm going to need your full name for my records, please." The voice on the other end went dead silent. Then a quiet, terrified, "Elizabeth Williams, VP of In-Flight Operations." "Thank you, Ms. Williams. We'll be in touch." Bianca hung up, handed the phone back, and the silver-haired woman in seat 2B started walking up the aisle toward her. Navy cardigan, pearl earrings, every step measured, slow, deliberate. She stopped in front of Bianca. Her eyes were shining. "Dr. Ingram." Bianca looked at her, exhausted. "Yes, ma'am. You don't remember me, but I remember you. I've been trying to decide for the last 10 minutes whether to introduce myself, because I didn't want to intrude on your grief. But I can't sit silent any longer. My name is Margaret Davis. I'm a United States Senator from the state of California, and 16 months ago, you operated on my granddaughter, Amelia. She was 6 years old, same age as your Jordan." Bianca's breath hitched. "Amelia Davis." "I remember her, Senator. She loved butterflies." "She did, sweetheart. She loved butterflies very much." Senator Davis's voice cracked. "You gave me 22 extra days with her, Dr. Ingram. 22 days. When she passed, you held my hand in that waiting room. You told me, and I have never forgotten these exact words. You told me, 'Senator, sometimes a child's heart is just too tired to keep fighting, and that is never, ever anybody's failure.' You told me that while my whole world was falling apart. And tonight, I watched your world fall apart on this airplane floor, and I am not going to sit silent. Senator Davis reached out and took both of Bianca's ash-covered hands in her own. Didn't flinch once. Not at the ashes, not at the tears, not at anything. Dr. Ingram, I am the chair of the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. This entire airline, every route, every slot, every federal subsidy, every single plane in this fleet falls under my committee's oversight. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Bianca's knees almost gave out. Senator Davis caught her by the elbow. Breathe, sweetheart. Just breathe. I've got you now. Jordan's got you. Amelia's got you. We all have you. And then Senator Margaret Davis turned around and looked at Karen Whitmore with eyes that made Karen take 2 full steps backward. Young lady. Karen couldn't speak. You just made the greatest mistake of your miserable little career. And I am personally going to make sure this is the last flight you ever work in American airspace. Do you understand me? Karen's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because somewhere deep in Karen Whitmore's chest, she finally understood exactly how badly she had misjudged the black woman in the hoodie. Senator Davis didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She walked right up to that cabin intercom, lifted it off its cradle, and pressed the button that connected directly to the cockpit communication system. Captain Anderson? Yes, Senator. I need you to patch me through to ground communications. Right now. I have 3 phone calls to make, and every single one of them is a federal emergency. Yes, ma'am. Karen Whitmore was standing frozen next to the galley. Her perfect hair was starting to come loose. Her mascara was smudged. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She tried one more time. Senator, ma'am, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Senator Davis didn't even look at her. Captain, can you please ask your senior purser to be silent until we land? If she speaks one more word, I'm adding witness intimidation to the list of charges she's about to face. Karen's mouth snapped shut, and Senator Davis made her first call. This is Senator Margaret Davis. Patch me through to the Secretary of Transportation. Yes, I understand it's after midnight on the East Coast. Tell him it's about Flight 1802. Tell him Jordan Ingram. He'll know what I mean by morning. She made her second call. This is Senator Davis. I need the on-call Assistant Director of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. I have a federal civil rights violation occurring in real time on a commercial aircraft. I need 2 agents waiting at gate 58B at LAX in 1 hour and 40 minutes. Yes, I'll hold. She made her third call. Richard, yes, I know what time it is. This is Senator Davis. I am currently sitting in seat 2B on your flight 1802 from Dulles to LAX. Your senior purser, Karen Whitmore, has just physically assaulted Dr. Bianca Ingram, spilled her 6-year-old son's cremated remains across your first-class carpet, and called your VP of in-flight operations, asking her to bury the incident. I want you on the tarmac at gate 58B in person when we land, Richard. Not your lawyer, not your PR team. You. Personally. Or I will personally move your company's next federal route audit to the front of my committee's calendar on Monday morning. She hung up. Richard Williams, CEO of the entire airline. She had his personal cell phone number memorized. Karen Whitmore was now openly trembling. Senator Davis turned back to Bianca, and her voice softened completely. Sweetheart, come sit down, please. You've been on your feet long enough. She guided Bianca back to seat 1A, helped her sit, pulled out a clean handkerchief from her purse, and began gently wiping the ashes from Bianca's cheeks. Bianca caught her wrist. Senator, there's something else you need to know before we land. What is it, sweetheart? Bianca's voice dropped to a whisper. Senator, I'm holding a document in my backpack. I was going to hand-deliver it to your committee office on Monday morning. Senator Davis's eyebrows lifted. What kind of document, Dr. Ingram? Bianca reached into the backpack at her feet with shaking hands and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. Thick. Official. Stamped with the seal of the National Children's Heart Network. Senator, for the last 14 months, my office has been conducting an internal medical study on racial disparities in pediatric cardiac care during commercial air transport. We've been tracking every incident reported to us by Black families who had children with critical heart conditions flying to specialist hospitals. Every incident of mistreatment by airline crew. Every denied accommodation. Every humiliation. Every refusal of service during medical emergencies. Senator Davis's eyes narrowed. How many incidents, Dr. Ingram? Bianca handed her the envelope. 482 incidents, across 16 airlines, in 3 years. The cabin went very, very still. And Senator, 61 of those incidents, 61, involve this exact airline. And 19 of those 61 specifically name one crew member by name. One woman, 18 years of seniority, repeatedly assigned to East Coast first-class routes. Bianca's eyes lifted and locked onto Karen. Karen Whitmore. Karen made a small choking sound. Senator Davis's hands tightened on the envelope. Dr. Ingram. Why didn't you release this report publicly before now? Because I was trying to do it the right way, Senator. I was going to walk into your office Monday morning with this data and ask you to sponsor a federal civil rights bill protecting medical transport passengers. I had the bill already drafted, 43 pages. I have it on a flash drive in this same envelope. You drafted a federal bill, Dr. Ingram? I drafted a federal bill, Senator, with 3 Johns Hopkins law professors ready to introduce. Senator Davis was staring at her now with something close to awe. And tonight? Bianca looked down at the wooden box in her lap, at Jordan's ashes, at the Spider-Man wristband Eli Brooks had left beside the box. Her voice was quiet. Tonight, Senator, I was just a mother trying to take my baby to the ocean. Senator Davis turned her face away for one long second. When she turned back, her eyes were wet, but her voice was iron. Dr. Ingram, when we land tonight, I am taking that bill, I am taking that data, and I am personally walking it onto the Senate floor on Monday morning. And I am going to put your son's name on the front of it. Do I have your permission? Bianca's voice broke. Yes, Senator. Please. The Jordan Ingram Civil Rights in Air Travel Act. Bianca nodded, unable to speak. Senator Davis turned to Captain Anderson. Captain, I need you to make an announcement to the entire cabin, right now. Yes, ma'am. Captain Anderson lifted the PA. His voice carried through the whole plane. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. In approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes, we will be landing at Los Angeles International Airport. I need to inform every passenger on this flight that a federal crime has occurred in the first-class cabin tonight. When we land, I will be asking every passenger to remain seated while federal law enforcement boards the aircraft. I apologize for any inconvenience, and I want you all to know, personally, from me, that the behavior some of you witnessed tonight does not represent this airline, this flight crew, or this country. Thank you for your patience. The cabin broke into applause. Actual applause. 40 grown adults clapping for a captain who finally did the right thing. Karen Whitmore slid down the galley wall and sat on the floor with her face in her hands. And somewhere in coach, a black grandmother who'd been listening to everything through the curtain whispered, Lord Jesus, the wicked have finally been caught. 2:14 a.m. Pacific Time, Flight 1802 touched down at LAX so softly you could barely feel the wheels kiss the runway. Captain Anderson taxied to Gate 58B himself, slowly, deliberately, because he wanted Karen Whitmore to feel every single second of what was waiting for her. Through the window on the right side of the cabin, the passengers could see red and blue lights flashing across the jet bridge. Lots of them. Sarah Brooks, still filming from seat 4A, zoomed her camera in slowly. 5 black SUVs, 2 LAPD cruisers, a federal marshal's vehicle, and standing at the front of the gate, in a hastily buttoned dress shirt, no tie, hair a mess, was a 58-year-old man with the face of somebody who had just woken up to the worst phone call of his entire career. Richard Williams, CEO of the airline, in person, on the tarmac, at 2 in the morning. Captain Anderson picked up the PA one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. Federal law enforcement will now board the aircraft." The jet bridge door opened. 5 FBI agents walked in, one after the other, in dark jackets with yellow letters across the back. Behind them, 2 LAPD officers. Behind them, 3 Senate staffers with badges around their necks. And behind them, Richard Williams himself. The lead FBI agent, a tall woman with short brown hair and kind eyes, walked straight to Bianca first. Not to Karen, not to the captain, to Bianca. "Dr. Ingram, I'm Special Agent Caroline Brown, FBI Civil Rights Division." Senator Davis briefed us over the phone. "Ma'am, I am so deeply sorry for your loss. May I please escort you off this aircraft personally?" Bianca nodded, clutching Jordan's box. Agent Brown offered her arm. Bianca took it. And that's when Agent Brown turned her head and said 4 words that made every hair on Karen Whitmore's body stand straight up. "Whitmore, on your feet." Karen was still sitting on the galley floor. She looked up slowly. Her mascara was running in 2 long black streaks down her cheeks. "Please, please, I didn't know who she was." Agent Brown's voice was flat and cold. "Karen Whitmore, you are under arrest for violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 245, interference with federally protected activities on the basis of race. You are also under arrest for assault on a federal contractor aircraft. You are also under arrest for desecration of human remains. You are also under arrest for witness intimidation related to your phone call to Elizabeth Williams, which we have already obtained a recording of from the in-flight communications system. You have the right to remain silent." The handcuffs clicked closed around Karen's wrists in front of every passenger in that cabin. Sarah Brooks's camera captured every second of it. That footage would hit the Washington Post website in 3 hours and 32 minutes, and by sunrise, it would have 12 million views. Richard Williams stepped forward. He walked past his handcuffed senior purser like she didn't exist. He stopped 3 feet in front of Bianca, and then Richard Williams, CEO of a $60 billion airline, dropped down onto both of his knees in the aisle of his own first-class cabin. "Dr. Ingram." His voice was raw. "Dr. Ingram, I have no words. There are no words. I failed you. I failed your son. I failed every black passenger this airline has ever carried. I am resigning from my position effective immediately at sunrise, and I am personally committing $60 million of my own severance and stock holdings to whatever foundation you choose to establish in your son's name. Tonight, before I leave this airport." Bianca looked down at him, calmly. "Mr. Williams, please stand up. I don't need you on your knees. I need you to reopen every single one of the 6 racial discrimination complaints your executives buried in Karen Whitmore's file over the last 18 years. I need every woman she harmed to be found, contacted, and made whole by the end of this month. I need the 3 executives who buried those complaints to face the same federal charges Karen is facing tonight. And I need you to testify in front of Senator Davis's committee next week. Can you do those 4 things for me, Mr. Williams? Richard Williams rose slowly. Yes, Dr. Ingram. All 4. On my life. Then came the moment I want you to really hold on to, because this is where the silence lives. Agent Brown was leading Karen in handcuffs down the aisle toward the jet bridge. When Karen drew level with seat 1A, she stopped. She turned her head. She looked at Bianca one last time. She opened her mouth. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Not a single word. No excuse, no apology, no explanation. Not one sound. Because for the first time in 18 years, Karen Whitmore had finally looked into the face of a woman she could not bully, could not intimidate, could not dismiss, and she had absolutely nothing left to say. Bianca looked up at her calmly, and then she spoke the words that would be played on every news network in America by noon that day. Ma'am, my son's last words to me before he went into the operating room were, Mama, go save the other kids for me. That's what I'm about to do. Starting with every black child who ever has to fly on a commercial aircraft in this country. So you go to prison, ma'am. You go to prison and you sit there and you think about the fact that the woman you called a monkey on this plane is the woman whose name is going to be on a federal law that protects millions of children for the next 100 years. You think about that every single night. Because I'm going to keep my promise to my son, whether you're in a cell or not. The cabin was silent. Karen's knees buckled. Agent Brown had to hold her upright to walk her off the plane. And as she disappeared down the jet bridge in handcuffs, Captain Anderson stood up at the front of the cabin and began to clap. Slowly. 1 clap. Then another. Then Eli Brooks joined him. Then Sarah Brooks. Then Senator Davis. Then every single passenger on that airplane. 40 grown adults and 1 10-year-old boy in Spider-Man pajamas, standing in a first-class cabin at 2 a.m, giving a standing ovation to a black woman in an ash-stained hoodie holding a wooden box. 4 months later, Karen Whitmore pleaded guilty to all 4 federal charges in a Los Angeles courtroom. 38 months in federal prison. $920,000 in restitution. Permanent ban from the aviation industry for life. Her husband filed for divorce the same afternoon. Her daughter flew home from Georgetown with her black boyfriend, sat in the courtroom holding his hand, and refused to visit her mother in prison. 3 airline executives were charged and convicted for burying the complaints. Sarah Brooks's 6-part Washington Post investigation won the Pulitzer Prize the following spring. And on June 14, 2026, exactly 6 weeks after Flight 1802 touched down at LAX, the United States Senate passed the Jordan Ingram Civil Rights in Air Travel Act by a vote of 94-6. The president signed it into law in the Rose Garden. Bianca was standing beside him. So was Senator Davis. So was Captain Anderson. So was Eli Brooks in a brand new Spider-Man tie his mother bought him special for the occasion. And sitting in the front row, wearing a navy blue dress, was Jordan's grandmother Dolores, the same woman who had raised Bianca under a streetlight in East Baltimore 3 decades earlier. When the president handed Bianca the signing pen, she held it up to the sky and whispered, loud enough for only Dolores to hear, "They couldn't take it, Mama. They never could." 8 months later, the Jordan Ingram Foundation opened its doors. Free pediatric heart surgery for any black child in America whose family couldn't afford the bill. By the end of its 2nd year, the foundation had funded surgeries for 618 children. Every single one of them went home alive. Every single one of them. On the first anniversary of Jordan's death, Bianca walked to the end of Santa Monica Pier at sunset and scattered the last handful of his ashes into the Pacific. The wind carried them west, toward the horizon. Toward wherever 6-year-old boys in Spider-Man pajamas go when their tired hearts finally get to rest. Bianca whispered to the ocean, "Mama's saving them, baby. Just like you asked. Mama kept her promise." And somewhere, deep inside her chest, for the first time in over a year, she felt something that almost felt like peace. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever been humiliated in public for something you couldn't change? Your skin, your accent, your clothes, your last name, and had to carry that shame home alone because nobody in that room stood up for you? Have you ever wished, just once, that a stranger like little Eli Brooks would kneel down beside you and tell you that you matter? Or maybe, deeper question, has there ever been a moment in your life when you were the one who could have been Eli and you stayed silent instead? Be honest with yourself tonight, because Bianca Ingram didn't change the world because she was powerful. She changed it because when her whole world was ashes on a dirty airplane floor, she still kept a promise she made to a 6-year-old boy. And that's what real strength looks like. If this story moved you even a little bit, do 3 quick things for me right now. Hit that subscribe button so the algorithm knows stories about real justice still matter. Flash that like button so another grieving mother out there knows she is not alone tonight. And share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, tomorrow morning, somebody is going to have to choose between being Karen and being Eli. Make sure they choose right. Go save the other kids, just like Jordan asked.